everyone. Can you all hear me well? Can you just give me some reactions in the chat box? Yes or number one if you can hear me well, everyone. Thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful. Welcome back again to our webinar series. Today is the 13th of June on a Friday night. What a wonderful timing, isn't it? And I'm just happen to know that today is also the Independence Day of our friends from the Philippines. Isn't that? Well, congratulations, our Filipino friends. Happy Independence Day, Filipino friends. All right. So most of you might have known me before. I'm Han, and I'm the host of this insightful session entitled Amplified Language Learning Tools, Assessments, and Rewards to Champion Student Success. Before we begin, let me introduce our esteemed speakers, Ms. Linda Agnes and Ms. Violetta Antaka. Linda is the executive director of the Global Seal of Billiteracy, award-winning language educator, and a powerful voice in advancing multilingualism. A former National Language Teacher of the Year, her work focuses on advancing bilingualism through digitally shareable international language certification. Violetta is the European Partnerships Coordinator at Avon Assessment and a freelance teacher of English with 18 years of experience. She has coordinated multiple international collaborative projects that promote the development of students' language skills and is a frequent conference presenter and trainer. Now, a few words about EduVerse, the driving force behind today's webinar. Powered by ProEd Education Solutions, EduVerse PD Network is a platform for global educators to share and get shared all about education. EduVerse is committed to provide educators with invaluable learning opportunities and resources. From monthly newsletters on cutting-edge educational trends to live webinars every 2 months, we're dedicated to your professional growth, all free of charge. Get ready to spark real-world language mastery. Today's topic is designed for educators across all levels. We will explore practical tools like self-assessment methods, rubrics, and can-do statements, plus discover how to recognize and celebrate student growth with meaningful feedback and certifications that truly motivate our students. After the session, as usual, we kindly ask you to complete a short survey to help us improve. You then will receive an email within 24 hours with instructions to download your certificate. Now let's dive in. Feel free to ask questions throughout the session and get ready to be inspired. Linda and Violetta, the floor is now yours.
Thank you so much, Han. So I'm going to ask Viola if she'll begin with sharing our screen. And we want to really welcome you to this opportunity to think about how we can involve students in the language learning process. So it's not just the lessons that we deliver, but the role of student engagement and how we can get them a lot more excited by using some special tools, but also through assessment and rewards. And our goal really is student success. So that's where we'll begin now. And Viola and I are going to share this session. So we'll be going back and forth a little bit with our presenting. So Viola, next slide, please. So these are the three sort of topics or areas. I'm going to first talk about preparing students for success. And then Viola's going to talk about proficiency in action. And then finally, I'm going to share praise for growth. And then we'll end with our question and answer time. So with that, let's get started. Next. So when we think about preparing for success, we want to look at three areas: metacognitive strategies, formative assessments, and real-world tasks. These are the things that, according to all of the data and research, are most going to impact what you do in the classroom with your students. So metacognitive strategies, these are the ways that we plan, we monitor progress, and we evaluate how our students are learning. But more importantly, it's about getting students involved in that process. So they're actually thinking about, how do I plan to learn? How am I going to monitor my own growth and my learning? And how can I set goals? How can I check my own understanding and provide that feedback to the teacher so she knows if I'm getting it or not? And how can I reflect on what worked best so I learn best how to learn and how I interact with material? Formative assessments. These are not the tests that we give at the end of a unit or at the end of a lesson or at the end of a year, but rather the assessment is an assessment for learning. It is when teachers use ongoing activities, they use mini quizzes, observations, discussions, and most importantly, feedback from students to check if they're understanding. And if they're not, how do we modify instruction? How do we accelerate instruction if they already understand something? And then finally, the part that students are most excited about is, why does this even matter? When will I use the language I'm learning in the real world? And so if we can create activities that mimic real life situations where students can visualize themselves actually using the language in a real world place that's meaningful to them, that's going to get them excited about what you're learning in the classroom. Next. So let's talk about each one of these. So I just want to share some quick metacognitive strategies that you may or may not be using, but might want to add to your curriculum. These are short activities that are going to engage students in thinking about their learning. So the first one is candy wrapper. This is really a very quick start at the beginning of the class and end at the beginning of the class with a reflection on a can-do statement. It might be something as simple as, today we're going to work on the can-do statement of, I can ask and answer questions. And then maybe at the end of the class, you could ask your students, what questions do I still have? Do I know, can I name 5 question words? Can I ask and answer a question about a particular theme or class topic in the classroom? Our think aloud is a little different. This is where students actually, as a teacher, we model for students what they could do as part of their own metacognition or thinking about their learning. So for example, if students have just done a speaking activity or a writing activity, I might model for them questions that I would ask myself before I turn in that assignment. Or submit it or upload it. So I might say, did I use new vocabulary? Did I answer all of the questions? How many words did I use? Did I use more adjectives than I usually do? And just questions that students can ask themselves as kind of a mental checklist about their learning. How sticky noting. This is where students actually at the end of the class, you've already identified what your learning target is, the can-do statements that you're working on. At the end of the class period, they would take a sticky note and write, first of all, what they learned. And then on the other side of the sticky note, they would talk about how they learned it or how they practiced it or they can provide an example of what they did. And lastly, the storytelling. Storytelling is a big part of language learning. It's a big part to arrive at that B1 level of language skills, where you can give a descriptive sort of narrative. You can tell a story. But when students can do it with humor or with mystery, it makes it more fun. So this is an activity that you can do with individuals, partners, small groups, or even the whole class, where one person starts the story and another person picks it up or adds another kind of detail. But in each piece, you're emphasizing that that can-do statement of storytelling includes action, description, connections, sequencing. And so these are all tools that you can begin to use, but help students think about what they're learning, not just the learning of the sort of test item itself. Next. quick formative assessments. These are things that many of you already do, where we might be teaching or explaining something, especially if it's maybe more grammar related, and students may or may not give away if they're understanding, or they might just not, or you make the assumption that everything you've taught is also caught, and that's not necessarily true, not yet. And so these are some quick ways to find out if your students are understanding the material that you're working on, especially if you're doing a good job of teaching in the language, not just teaching about the language in the language the students would normally be speaking. So one of those is fist to 5 checks. And this is just where a student would use their hand as a hand signal very quickly to talk about how much of the information that they understood, from 0 being the fist to all 5 fingers, I've got this. Another one that you might use, a lot of you all probably already do, are live quizzes and games. This could be a Kahoot or a quiz, Gimlet, any of those kinds of tools where you can check to see if students actually understood what you offered in that classroom or they practiced in that class period. A digital exit ticket might be very similar, but you could be using a Google form or Nearpod, or just again, one of those Post-it note exit slips to just find out if the student can do what you've practiced or you learned about during that period of time. This informs you for the next day. Do they need more practice, or can we move on? And then the last one, this quick summary, which could be a video, it could be an audio, it could be a write, depending on what kinds of tools you want to use in your classroom. But where a student actually just records a brief video or audio, or writes a quick little flip, and is a summary of the lesson. Today, I learned that if I want to talk about sports, I can use vocabulary, I can use these verbs, they can do whatever it is that they want. But the student is reflecting on their learning, and this we know is going to help solidify the lesson that you prepared so carefully. Next. The most important thing for students, again, are the real world tasks. And if you begin to work with the can-do statements on a regular basis, you're going to find out that they're all centered in real world tasks. They actually are things they would do. I can ask and answer questions. I can talk about myself. These are things that happen in the real world. When you can compile them and maybe group them together to work with project-based learning that engages students, when students work with other students on a project, interactivity is going to happen as a result. So that is a really important piece to think about, that you want them to interact and engage with each other in conversation. And when you can do those with an actual task, that's something they would do on a trip or on the street, and interact with a speaker of the language they're learning, even better. Next. And it's now your turn, Viola.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Linda. It was a great introduction to formative assessment. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it and how to see proficiency in action. So first, I would like you to imagine a classroom where every student is seen, heard, and motivated. And not because they are chasing grades, but because they are witnessing their growth. And now try to imagine the same group of students who know exactly where they are going and they know how to get there. This is the power of formative assessment, because this is not about testing. It's rather about giving information to our students, giving feedback that fuels growth and helps us educators adjust instruction to meet students' needs. Wait, here. But it's not that at the end of a unit or a chapter, or maybe at the end of a term or a year, we just test our student and see if they are successful or not, because this is a summative assessment what it's about. But we would like to rather assess our students on an ongoing basis, because this is assessment for learning. It's assessment that helps our students notice their strengths and weaknesses and make changes if necessary. As you can see in this word cloud, I tried to include different words and phrases that are related to formative assessment. I'm going to mention them during my talk, but they are about this kind of feedback that we really would like to give our students and what it can or how it can help them make improvements in their skills. The goal of formative assessment is not only to inform the teacher, but also student. For the teacher, as I said, is to notice where our students are struggling and to help them make progress. But for students, it's to also become more aware of their learning. Because what we want to do, or what we should want to do, is to make our students responsible for their own learning. And formative assessment is a cornerstone of effective language teaching because it goes beyond traditional grading. It's something more. And I would like to mention a couple of benefits of formative assessments for both students and teachers. The first one is continuous growth monitoring. We have to imagine ourselves as gardeners. If we want our students to bloom, if we want them to be successful, we need to watch them on their way. We need to think what they really need, what kind of support we need to give them so that they can develop their skills. And a gardener also thinks about the plant, checks its leaves, measures in height, or sometimes even checks if the roots are okay, and provides support or nutrients the plant needs. And if we notice something that is wrong, we can adjust our teaching. We can review something if necessary, but also we can skip something if we can, if it's possible. With this kind of an ongoing instruction, we can adjust immediately. We can ensure that our students receive the right nutrients at the right time. And this is exactly about timely feedback and support. Plants need water, sunlight, different nutrients delivered at the right time, just like our students. If it's too late or too little, the growth can be stunted. And formative assessment helps us address issues before they become bigger and bigger. We want to intervene early enough so that we can clarify something, we can provide additional resources, or we can change our teaching, or maybe even adjust our methodology so that it meets the students' needs. And we need to remember that our students are different, like plants are different. And sometimes what works for one student doesn't work for another. That's why we should pay close attention to what our students are doing and how they are doing. And thanks to all this, we can cultivate motivation and confidence. Formative assessment is about celebrating small wins. It's about showing our students how far they've come, not only how far they need to go. This kind of recognition builds confidence and reassures our students that the growth is really happening, even if it's gradual or small for them. If we encourage our students to even make mistakes, but to work on what they are doing or to try harder, they can understand that mistakes are okay and they are a natural part of development. And this kind of joy that they have done something great becomes a motivation itself and helps students become confident. And as I said before, we have to encourage students to be responsible for their own learning. A plant instinctively leans toward the light, directing its energy towards growth. And formative assessment fosters the same instinct in our students because it helps them become more aware of their learning and of their needs. They become autonomous. When we as teachers provide the students with clear feedback and give them opportunities to reflect on it, our students are able to notice their own strengths and weaknesses and areas of improvement. This kind of self-awareness also cultivates metacognitive skills. They let our students stop and think, okay, what do I understand? What do I have to do to improve? Who can help me? Or what should I use? Or maybe what should I change? they become more responsible for their own progress. They know where they should direct their learning to. But even if we know that there are so many benefits of formative assessment, do you think that teachers are really using it in their own instruction? Well, I will show you interesting findings from one of the surveys. In 2023, European School Education Platform carried out a survey on language teaching, and one of the things that respondents were asked about is whether they integrated formative assessment techniques into teaching or not. And as you can see here, approximately 50% of language teachers in Europe said that they incorporate elements of formative assessment. Well, it's a good number, I would say. But if we think about it, then the other half of the teachers may not be fully leveraging the formative assessment strategies. Why is that? What are the reasons? Well, the first reason is the lack of time. And when I was preparing my speech, I found this kind of information. It's about the teachers in the US, but I think that it's the same with any other teacher in any country. And it says that over 8 in 10 teachers say that there is not enough time in the day to get all their work done. And what they had in mind, it was grading, preparation for the lesson, answering emails, or doing any other work that is strictly related to teaching. So if we think about it, then where is time for formative assessment? They ask, no time. Then lack of training. The teachers often worry that they don't know enough and they need more training to become successful. But we have to remember that if we want to see the progress of our students, we need to establish a baseline for students' proficiency skills. If we know where our students are, it's easier to adjust our teaching. It's true that as teachers, we know exactly our student. We know our students. We know that, for example, this one is good at speaking. The other one is much better at writing. But we have to determine that every day there is some progress, that they are doing something more, that they are leveling up. And how to do it? We don't have to spend much time on preparing formative assessment. We can implement just elements and do step by step. And once we start doing it, it's much, much easier. And I would like to give you 3 examples of formative assessment techniques that I'm using, and I think that they are really easy to start with. The first one is using AI to identify student proficiency levels. Well, AI tools, and there are many of them, can help us analyze our students' responses, patterns, and interactions. And it happens very quickly. What we need to have is a sample from our student, like this one. This is a real text that my student created for Egzamin ósmoklasisty, which is an exam at the end of primary school, and they have to write an email according to certain instruction. So this is the text that I asked my student to do, but it also can be, for example, a speaking task. We can record our student. But if we want to make it useful, if we really want to check what our student's level is, we have to ask our student to do it in front of us. It cannot be given as a homework. And what apps or what tools can we use? Just a couple of examples. Most of them are free. So we have ChatGPT, very well known, I would say, Perplexity, Claude, or Twee. And when we have a sample from our student, the next thing what we have to do is to prepare a prompt. So we need to think what we really want to get, what kind of answer or feedback you would like to receive. And this is the prompt I prepared. So I wanted to have analysis of my student sample to give me a level of proficiency according to the CEFR scale. There are different scales, so we have to think which one we are using, which one is popular, for example, in our country, and that's why I chose CEFR. Then I wanted to get also the descriptors the CFR descriptors that tell exactly that this is the level of proficiency. Then I wanted to have examples from the text that my student created. So I wanted to see that, okay, this is the descriptor, the can-do statement, and it's visible in my student's work. And the last thing I wanted to have is the explanation that is in a teacher and student friendly language, because I would like my students to understand it as well. The kind of response, or maybe the analysis that we will have, I will show you in a second, is great not only for the teachers and for the students, but also for the parents. If you give it to the parents, they can clearly see where their students, their kid is, and what he or she should do to move on. And I would like to show you the results. It's not the detailed report, but just as a few interesting pieces of information. The first thing what I got is the CFR level. So I know that my student is on B1, and then I also have information about what students at this level generally are expected to do. The next thing that I got is the evidence. So according to a CFR descriptor, I also have the example from the sample. I can clearly see that, okay, that's correct. My student is right there. Then I also can learn that mistakes, even if it's B1 level, are totally fine. Even if there are grammatical or spelling errors, they don't mean that the student should be on a lower level, because these minor errors doesn't change the let's say clarity or effectiveness of understanding of this text. And then I got the simplified explanation for students, and I'm sure that when they read it, they understand where they are, what they should do next. And I analyzed the same sample using Perplexity, and as you can see, I mostly got the same information, but another one thing that was additional was what could be improved to reach B1. Of course, if I included that in my prompt, I would probably get it from ChatGPT as well, but here I have information. If you scan this code, you can go to a document where I included the prompt, my student sample, and also the whole explanation from ChatGPT and Perplexity. Within the last week, I also recorded my student talking about a given topic, and I analyzed his speech in Perplexity, and I included that in this document as well. So you can have a look what it looks like, and I would like you to try it on your own. This is really interesting, and it gives extreme motivation to students when they see, wow, I am there. I didn't think I can do it that well. Honestly, this is a great thing, and it doesn't take too much time. It's just within minutes, I would say. The next thing that we can use in our classroom is rubrics. Rubrics are not just grading tools. They help us clearly notice where our students are and what they need to do next to level up. If they are used intentionally, they promote reflection. Students can think what they are doing well or maybe what needs improvement. It can help us guide instruction and encourage students to become more autonomous. But it also helps shift focus from grades to progress, because that's the most important thing. And another important thing is that the rubrics also don't help only teachers. They can help students to assess themselves. They can check, okay, I can do this or I can do that. Or we can use them in peer assessment during classroom when they work in groups. I will show you a couple of rubrics that were prepared by the Global Seal of Biliteracy, and the rubrics here are for 4 skills. So we have reading, we have listening, we have writing and speaking. They look more or less the same, and as you can see, the student can see the levels from A1 to B2 is according to the CFR scale. And the rubric is broken into categories like vocabulary, text length, comprehensibility or comprehension, it depends on the skill, application and text type. And each descriptor here is specific, concrete, and centered about what the student can do not about what they can't. Because if we can see, all of them include can-do statements. So as I said, the student can work on self-assessment, and these little circles allow students to just leave a tick and say, okay, I am here when it comes to vocabulary. And it doesn't mean that they can be on A1 in vocabulary and text length is on the same level. No, it can differ and it's still okay. Thanks to these rubrics, the students can see progress over time, but they can also see what success looks like at different proficiency levels. And they can also honestly see their strengths and needs. And because these rubrics are descriptive, not judgmental, it allows for honest reflection and growth. Here is the QR code. You can scan it and you can go to the resources. You can download them for free and work with them, or use them in your classroom. And the last idea that I would like to give you is the assessment, because it's the quickest and easiest way to check where our students are, even the whole classroom. If we give them standards-based assessment that provides us with information about the student's level in every skill. And we know that there are lots of different tests, and which one should we use? Well, definitely we shouldn't go for tests like multiple choice or fill in the blanks or just reading comprehension, because it's not about using students' skills or their language in practice. It's about only testing something, some part of a language, but it's not what we want to really measure. So we should choose a very good tool, a very good test that also goes with meaningful reports. And advanced stamp test is a test that is adaptive and accurately measures the real-world language proficiency skills. And after completing the test, our students are provided with a report like this. As you can see, the report breaks down proficiency levels in different skills. So we have all of them: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And it allows students and educators to pinpoint specific areas that need attention. By analyzing these reports, we can see exactly where our students are. We can see the level description, so what the students are already able to do. And we also have suggestions to power up. So these are suggestions that give clear information about what can be done for our students to put their skills on a higher level. And these tests, the stamp tests by Avant, use real-world communicative tasks that reflect students' functional language proficiency. I would like to show you 3 short films in which teachers tested their students using Avant test and had the reports like this, and they will also show you what they think about it. So this is the first film.
Okay.
Can you hear
and
it?
then, on the other hand, we have participated in a band test, which with pair sharing was another project with the United States. But the band test gave us the opportunity to report, and this can give us the overview of the 4 skills we tested in our students. That was so helpful. Here you can see the different skills: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. We had 6 students taking the test. 3 were aged about 13 years old and 3 were older, 15 years old. And we were worried that the older ones were above B1 at least, because this is our goal as a school. So, well, we were very glad to see that they were, and not only that, but one of our students got a C1 in reading, which is very helpful, not only for the teacher she has now, but also for herself, because as you can see in the individual report, it gives you an overall of the skills. But what I find it more useful is this: not only the level descriptions, which tells you what does it mean, this level, okay, in reading, for example. It gives you suggestions to power up. I like this one, power up to the next level. So, for example, in reading, it says, practice reading a variety of extended texts, such as novels, professional journals, instruction manuals, and texts with author intended interferences and noise. Focus on building depth of vocabulary by studying and learning multiple senses of words, including homonyms and synonyms. So, these can help not only the student, but also the teacher. I have used these tips to perform my classes, to set goals for.
Okay, let me play the second one.
The test provides detailed feedback on specific language skills, helping students identify their strengths and also areas which need improvement. And this can help them guide their learning and focus on targeted skill development.
And the last one, also very short.
Seeing their current level of proficiency can motivate students to improve by identifying gaps in their skills. They become more aware of the steps that they need to take in order to level up, in order to reach their desired level of fluency.
Okay, so now to sum up, for us as educators, it's time to rethink. We need to imagine ourselves as gardeners. If we want our students to flourish, we want them to bloom, we need to take care of them all along the way, and then only we can see proficiency in action. And we can't only teach our students, we need to empower them, we need to make them responsible for their learning, and we have to remember that not necessarily what we taught was caught. So that's why we need to check where our students are and provide them with the support that they need. Only this way we can make them more aware of what they are doing and where they should go. We make them more reflective on what they are learning and how they are doing it. We also have to inspire our students' motivation, because this is the real success or a way to success. So that's how we can see proficiency in action. And now Linda will carry on and she will tell us something more about praising our students.
Thank you, Viola. We'll go to the next slide. That was, I hope, really insightful for you to see that there are so many different ways that we can provide some feedback to students, personalized coaching, even within that sort of busy schedule. I know the AI activity is something that I have done, and it's something that can be really insightful for students, and they can even do that as part of their own homework and preparation. Did I meet the goals of this particular level I'm working toward? And so when our students work hard, when they're trying to improve, when they want to be successful, it's really important that we praise that growth. Oftentimes a student only sees the mark at the end of a learning period, at the end of a school year. They see the grade at the end of a test or a score, and they think that if they continue to get the same grade, that they haven't improved, but the work has gotten more difficult, or but they don't understand that they've made progress. So helping students understand that proficiency journey is really important, so that they continue to be engaged, and so they don't give up and they don't stagnate. And so my question would be, how does your own program recognize student success? And if something quick comes to mind that you think might be useful to the group, please add it to the chat. So here we go. Let's talk about some ways that we can recognize student success next. The first and most important piece is to go back to that idea of metacognition. Do your students know where they are on that language learning pathway, on that proficiency pathway? Do they know their level? Do they know the descriptors that tell them that they are at that level? So if I said to a student, what level are you at? And they could tell me, and then they could tell me why, because I can, and using those can-do statements about their descriptors of what their level is. But then the next question is, do they know what they're working on? Oftentimes we need to sort of teach ahead because students need to practice a skill for a while before they actually capture that. And so as we help students understand the race to proficiency, we also want them to know that there isn't one finish line, that each finish line can be celebrated as they move from one level to the next across their 4 different skills of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And our students within our own classes are different. They're not all at the same level as Viola shared, which means we sometimes need to provide different support for different students, but let them all celebrate the sort of individual race that they have begun. Next. And so there's lots of ways we can begin to sort of cultivate that growth mindset. We can surround students with ideas that are going to help them understand their proficiency pathway. These can be visuals similar to what we have here, whether it's a poster of the ice cream cone with each layer of the ice cream, each scoop being more difficult levels of language, and students can understand the progression from that point. Or it can be posters that particularly describe the level and what they are able to do at that level, but also what am I working on to power up or to level up or move to the next level. And within one classroom, I would have 2 or 3 different levels of students. So I might have 2 or 3 different posters available. I might add to a lesson or even to a test paper the can-do statements that test paper is working on, and that will help students focus on what they need to demonstrate as they perform or take that particular test or quiz. Next. Then we want students to visualize the pathway, that is a journey, that it's not just what you're working on today, but where you will be getting to tomorrow. And even helping them understand that their success in one skill may still require focus and extra activity or practice in a skill where they might be weaker. But oftentimes students just sort of, focus on the weakness and the error and the grammar problem that they may have, and they don't realize that they've made progress along the journey. And so one of the things that we've done with Global Seal is to help you find ways for your students to visualize their pathway and to chart their own course. And we've done that through some free tools that we're calling our Pathway Awards. There's tools that include this language passport, where a student can, after a formative assessment or a summative assessment that gives a proficiency level, they can actually track what they've successfully done with stickers or stamps or smiley faces. Then we also have reflection sheets and goal setting sheets, so students can actually begin to monitor their own language progress as they grow their proficiency and their skill. And to reward that, we have not just our certifications beginning at the B1 level, but we want to recognize progress in those early years. And so we also have Pathway Award ribbons at the levels that precede our certificate. Next. So when we think about formative assessment, that's great, but it has to be combined with actionable feedback. The students need to know what comes next. So not that I just have a grade, but what do I do to improve my score? What do I do to improve my language skills? So they need to know, yes, where they are, what the baseline is, but they need to do specific things to level up. And those come in the form of can-do statements. And they're widely available, and you can the CEFR can-dos are right there on the Council of Europe's website, so they're easily use your AI tool, your favorite AI tool, to find them. But these are things that are in short statements that students can understand and can really frame their work like, oh, because oftentimes we get caught up in vocabulary or grammar terms that don't really link to those real world activities, and they don't seem comprehensible to a student. So you might say use more adjectives, but rather say be more descriptive. I want to see and hear and know what the colors are, and things like that can help students a lot. So remember, benchmarking along the way is really important, so students feel that they've made success, They may be still getting the same grade or mark in school, but they can measure that they've made progress on the proficiency pathway journey, because that's what it is. It's a journey, it's not a destination. Next. And to do that, we want to celebrate success. And many of you may have some kind of a program, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But there's also data and research to suggest that if you implement an awards program, that it will change student behavior. Not because you adopt a new test, but because you celebrate the success that students have. And so we found this, especially with in the research, that this not only works with your regular, sort of motivated student, but it also helps students who are at risk or students who are struggling. In fact, it shows, according to the data, that when you implement an awards program, that their level of persistence, that they keep trying and that they will try harder, goes up. And that their achievement goals, when they see that they're being met, also inspire ongoing improved academic performance. So celebrate success, not just for the celebratory moment, but for the power and the impact it has on making positive student motivation and engagement. Next. And this is sort of one of my favorite pieces, is to celebrate what you want to duplicate. And that is a lot of what the Global Seal of Biliteracy and our pathways are about, is celebrating student progress. Because when you celebrate it, when you make success visible, when students realize that they have made progress, that actually feeds further progress. And it also sets an example for those who are coming after. That's what I want. I want to be on stage. I want to earn a certificate. And so by doing that, we celebrate what we want to duplicate. Next. And so the Global Seal essentially is taking a formative assessment or a summative assessment in some cases, but that is an external approved assessment. And many of these are tests that you may already be providing, including the stamp test that we saw the visual score report of earlier from Viola. And we take those and we turn them into a free international language certification. We verify the scores that the school would submit to us. And qualifying test scores receive a serial number digitally shareable certificate. That provides the recipients not just with their certificate, but with a digital platform so they can share their certificate through a URL code on social media, or they can send it to a university. And the schools that award the Global Seal have their own dashboard platform so they can track their progress. So we're turning something that is possibly already a part of your language program into a motivating certificate that students will not only be able to celebrate the moment of their progress, but be able to use in the future in the workplace or academic situation. Next. So the Global Seal is using what we've found to be the best practices for a certificate that has meaningful value and cannot just be recognizing a moment, but be leveraged for future benefits to the student. So it is visible. It's something they can see both tangibly in the form of our paper certificate with its embossed seal, but also the digital version. It's comparable. So an employer or a program that's looking to evaluate who do they want to accept or who do they want to hire can actually compare the certificate because it is stackable. It has 3 different tiers. It's verifiable and that shareable feature, as well as the students can continue to level up. Because what we saw, and perhaps you saw just a glimpse of in that score report, is that students are not at the same level in every skill. So by the time the student reaches that baseline of B1 in all 4 skills, it's likely that one of their skills, maybe an interpretive skill like listening or reading, is already at the next level of skill. And that turns into ongoing motivation to continue working harder because it gamifies learning. Students are already like, well, I'm almost at the next level in this skill, so I just have to work a little harder in the area of weak. And again, that creates learner autonomy. Next. What we see when a program adds credentials or they add a certificate is that it impacts student behavior, not just the learning behavior, which we already saw, but things like that idea of being persistent. One study by the BYU University found that when they introduced the stackable credentials, that they saw dropout rates go down by 20%. We've seen students determine that, that having that seal of biliteracy, not just a test, they had the test, but having that certificate really could impact their future. So that's personally motivating. And we see students excited about leveling up, that gamification piece. So if we'll click the slide again, this is a quote from an actual student that I probably heard a number of times from many other students, is it gives you a motive to finish. Before I was like, why am I in this class? And that's oftentimes how students feel. But when they have that extrinsic motivation to go after something that they believe is meaningful for their future, it changes their activity and their behavior in class. Next. So the global seal, as I mentioned, is digitally shareable. It uses a unique serial number system, which allows it to, you create the platform digital language profile, which you see on the left. Notice that the certificate is stackable. Whatever is the newestly earned certificate, that new certificate is going to go to the top of the platform at top of the profile. So you can earn certificates in multiple languages and continue to level up in the languages that you're using, and that will show up on that platform. Also, that serial number can be added to a CV or to a resume, or here, as we see on LinkedIn, under licenses and certifications. The goal is not just to have that moment for applause, that this is something the student is excited about working toward, but also to provide them with a document that values and verifies every language skill they have, so they can use that for their future opportunities. Next. The Global Seal, as you can see, is international, and it serves a wide variety of language programs that are listed here on the left. To date, it's been issued in 67 countries, and we value multilingualism. Whether your students are learning English, maybe they have another language that they've also had at home, or they've learned through experience, or because of the location where they're currently living. We can certify language skills in over 160 different languages. Next. And finally, as an organization, this is your dashboard where you can track the fluency distributions, the languages of both the first and the learned languages of your language of students, as well as be able to see data over time. Because we want to empower your program, provide your administrator with efficacy values so that they can see that what you're doing is really working. And you can see at a glance the progress your students are making. Next. So with that, I'd like to close with just sort of an invitation to check out the Global Seal and learn how you might be able to use this kind of program to motivate your students. Our process is free. There's a QR code here to the website, and we encourage you to think about how you can not just recognize your students' progress, but also celebrate their language proficiency. And at this point, Viola and I are going to take some questions.
Linda, I see that there are some questions in the Q&A section of Zoom. Can you assess those questions from the Q&A?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a question. What are we going to do if students are good in answering questions during discussions, but perform poorly in their tests or quizzes? Viola, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, I'm looking at it, so let me read it again. Well, if they are, I'm not sure if I understand it well. It means that the students are able to speak well during a discussion in a class. Well, it's good that they can formulate their own ideas. They can express themselves. If they do poorly in their tests and quizzes, we need to think why it happens. Maybe there is a lot of stress, and maybe we have to think about what kind of activities we include there. Well, it all depends on the student and on the classroom. It's difficult for me to say. Linda, what do you think?
Well, I also wondered too, and I don't know what the details of your tests or quizzes are, but it could be that if the student is answering questions that they're very verbal, that they do well in speaking, but maybe the test was in writing or the quiz was in writing, which isn't their strength. And so that might be something to kind of think about is there a way to value the speaking? Is there a way to assess that in a different way? So again, there's not a lot of information here, but students, we do know there is test anxiety oftentimes. So how do we, and I think that's a piece where formative assessment can help, because if the student realizes all along the way that they're able to, they've done the formative checks and they can meet those can-dos because they know it's coming, that will likely improve their outcome on the test as well. Another question is about student and parents' feedback. And one of the things that I've found with these kinds of school reports where there is leveling up information is it's much better than just saying the student needs to do more practice, or they need to do their homework, or they need to study more. Rather, it really helps the parent be much more specific. The student needs to practice doing questions and answers. They can do this, and you can actually have use the AI tool, for example, for a student to practice their language skills in that way. Viola, do you want to take another
Yes,
question?
yes. I wanted to add something to this because this kind of information here tells us something important. Uh, Students get marks in the classroom, but very often it doesn't express what they really can do with the language. And if we give them, the students and the parents, detailed feedback about the students' skills, it can totally differ from their marks. It's totally okay. So that's why formative assessment is extremely important, because we notice much more than just the grades, and that's why we should implement it in our teaching. So that I wanted just to add that. And can we have a downloadable presentation of this webinar? Well, I think that it's okay. We will have to think with the organizers how to do it, but absolutely, I think it's not a problem. So you can also contact me or Linda, send us an email, and I think that we can share the presentation so that you can use it later. No problem. Yeah,
I see a
Linda?
question, is formative assessment should be graded? The goal of formative assessment is generally that it is not graded, but it is evaluated. In other words, it is, it's something that you can provide as a coaching tool to say, well, let's look at the rubric together. And those rubrics that Viola shared are available on the Global Seals website. But that piece to say, so a student can sort of self-assess based on those can-do statements or based on the rubric or the criteria. So it should be evaluated as a way to, so it's providing feedback of how are they doing, but it should not necessarily be a grade. It isn't a summative grade in that respect. Do you want to take another question, Viola?
Yes, I'm looking at it. Let me see. Importance of informing parents about their children's performance at school. Yes, that's something that we mentioned. This is extremely important. How can I assist when the students lack comprehensive, even if the questions are easy to understand? If they I don't know if I understand it well. Okay, so I think that it's about lacking comprehension, even if the questions are easy to understand. I don't know, maybe what is easy for us is not necessarily easy for our students. Sometimes we can use different words to explain the same idea, or provide some scaffolding. Linda, what do you think? What can you add?
Yeah, I would agree. And that's part of where those formative tests, like that FIST 1 to 5, could work, where a student's like, I don't know what's going on, especially if we are teaching a language classroom in the language of that we're learning. For some students that they may need more assistance. They may need, more visuals. They may need more miming of activities, or they may even need you to take them aside and do it in the language of that they speak, depending upon the student's skill. There's a great question here on, is multiple choice and other pen and paper tests, should they be avoided, and should they be more performance based? I always find that that's important to do if you can. Certainly multiple choice can work well, for example, for a listening or reading comprehension kind of assessment. But when we look at writing and speaking, those are proficiency tasks. Those are tasks where, for example, if we look at the very lowest pre-A1 level, then a student is dealing at the word level. Well, we could have a very good C1 student, but if you're asking them to fill a blank in with one word, you're working on an A1 task, because they're not using language based on the descriptors of their C1 level. It might assess vocabulary quickly, potentially, or even a grammar point, but it doesn't show what the student can do in context of the language. So it's not a real world task. Very few of us in the real world go around filling in blanks. I don't know a job that does that. So if we think about using those kinds of maybe more quicker assessments for reading or listening comprehension, but try to do performance-based, open-ended tasks for speaking and writing. That way a student can do what they can do. They can show you more. If I can do more, a fill in the blank question doesn't allow me to do that. And I think, if you say describe your house, a student could do that at a very low level, but it could also be a very complex level because you gave an open-ended prompt. So I would always try to use those when possible.
Okay, so let me see. I think that we don't have much more time, but I don't know. Maybe we can ask Han.
You guys can have time for one more question.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. There's a question here about how does the school get access for tracking the global seal? That comes with just awarding your first certificate. So once you begin awarding certificates, that dashboard would be available to you. So that was a very quick one. And let's see, you want to take one last one, Viola?
I think there was something, how can we know the right time to assess students? Well, it should be ongoing, as we mentioned. So whenever we notice that our students are struggling with something, maybe there is some confusion during a class, maybe, as I said, we know our students very well, so we can notice if something is not okay. So we can ask them to use, for example, exit tickets, as Linda mentioned, or we can have some low-stake quizzes during the classroom and notice that there is something wrong, something that we have to revise. So we just need to pay attention to our students, how they behave. If we see any confusion, then it's time to assess our students, but not for grades, but to get some feedback from them and then evaluate our teaching and instruction to adjust it to what our students need at this moment. Linda, would you like to add, or?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think, the most important piece is that students know where they are, and then you give them some coaching and feedback so they can fix it, so they can improve. Because if we just give the, here it is, that's your grade, too bad, that doesn't really help students learn the language that we love to teach.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Next up, looking ahead, mark your calendars for our next event. Our next webinar will take place on August the 15th, 2025 at 8:30 p.m. Vietnam time, featuring Mr. Aslam Ullah from Qatar. We will explore practical ways to use AI in the classroom. I think this topic is going to be super hot because that will be teachers are needed right now. I'm too eager for that. So mark your calendars, everyone, and wait for the registration link from our website. Stay tuned for updates via EduVerse platform and newsletter. And don't forget to connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram for more teaching tips and updates. One last exciting announcement, which is about our Edu 361 Expo 2025. We are thrilled to invite you to this one-of-a-kind global education conference happening on July the 25th to 27th. This 48-hour non-stop live event allows you to join anytime from anywhere. With over 100 global educators, 100 plus presentations, and dynamic activities, including, you can name it, one-to-one sessions with experts, gamified learning experiences, and exclusive rewards. This event promises cutting-edge trends, practical strategies as usual, and expert insights you won't find anywhere else, I promise. Are you interested in speaking at this specific event? No problem. If you have an effective classroom practice, a fresh perspective, or an educational trend you'd love to share, we warmly welcome your proposal. Speaker application closed on June 21st, so don't miss your chance to shine on a global stage. More details are available on our website. So I can't wait to welcome you to this one-of-a-kind, the very first time we introduce this 48-hour non-stop event. The very first time I've seen something like this hosted in Vietnam and Asia nearby. Finally, thank you once again for your energy and active participation today. We look forward to seeing you again at a future event. Keep the flame of learning burning bright, and until next time, take care and stay curious, and have a wonderful weekend, everyone.